What's happening in our society, in my belief and what I'm observing, is that women are viewing men through their lens rather than trying to step into a man's lens. And men are trying to help women through their lens rather than trying to step into a woman's lens. And really understand the feminine and the masculine and how they're actually curated or behaviorally trained in our society. Once you unlock a little bit of that, then you're able to see, this is a very interesting, beautiful thing that we have before us, but it requires a lot of context. So it does take a lot of communication, proper communication, peace, understanding, and curiosity. More than anything, curiosity. The moment you can be curious for another person's journey is the moment you find true empathy, love, and peace, because there's no longer judgment, but rather you're a very complex, beautiful human. Where does all that come from? Let's start playing with that box. We could actually, you know what? You and I, for a lifetime, delve in this box. We can delve into this box for a very long time because there's so much to unravel here if we're curious enough.
We did it. We made it. We're here. We're finally having the conversation, sort of digital face to digital face. Reef and I got connected at an Arizona entrepreneurs event. We sat down. I think we were just like sitting outside, kind of waiting for things to happen, and struck up a conversation. And one thing that I have learned and appreciate about you is that you've sort of blended mission with work, fun with mission. Like, you've essentially integrated a variety of things, and that takes a deep knowing of self. You also just mentioned that you've gone through a pretty epic program. I kind of want to hear all about this program.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I do believe that it's balance. You know, how can you if you can turn your work into play, that doesn't seem like work. You know, you hear that often, but I think most people don't actually do it. They just kind of say it because it's a cool bumper sticker, but don't live it. And I've kind of chosen the path of integrating it. Why not do it and see what happens, you know, paint with all the colors of the universe. Part of that discovery is, you know, I had been traveling the world last year, and it was a very special year for me. However, some shortcomings came to a front and ahead with my own internal processing, behavioral regulation, like emotional regulation, these kind of things that robbed me of a very potentially beautiful 2024. You know, so I was in that journey. I decided I'm going to go do what other people aren't willing to do, because that's what I've done most of my life. You know, venture into the things that are the hardest. You know, there are other people
unknown.
The unknown, you know, venture into the heart of the unknown self, you know. In starting a company, people told me impact plus profitability, you'll never make it happen. You know, it won't happen. You have to choose one or the other. You either got to be a nonprofit worker or you got to choose to work business, you know. And I thought, man, that just sounds so short-sighted. I feel like I could do both. And WeAssist is here, and I did it, you know. So to naysayers, I'm like, I'm doing it. Same thing with this program. I recognized that there was something wrong. It was a pattern that repeated 5 times in my life. And, you know, after the first couple was like, okay, yeah, maybe them, yeah. Then the fourth, it's like, ooh, you know, there is something here. And that's when I started to get help. After the fourth relationship, I was like, I'm going to go get some work done and really get into this thing. Well, I was led down a wrong path. The work that I did wasn't work that actually helped. It was a Band-Aid. It covered up at mass. It was a very feel-good, it was a very feel-good program that boosted your ego and made you feel like you were fine just the way you were, when the truth is we have to do deep work to cure things. You know, you can't look at a cancer victim and say, if you just believe you don't have cancer, you won't have cancer anymore. You know, it's like you have to do something.
Because I think there's probably going to be a lot of really good meat here. Do you want to be a bit more specific about what was coming up and what the pattern was?
Sure. Yeah, I love that. I hope to do a lot of this work here in the future to help entrepreneurs be conscious masculines and also women, help them in relationship. The premise of what I hope to do here as I build my business, and this is off WeAssist, you know, but this is something I want to do because it aligns with my world impact view. Is helping couples and people understand that the person that they are fighting is never the one across the table, but rather themselves. You know, the deeper we can go into self and venture into self, the deeper our understanding of our own self and empathy will be for those around us. Because we'll recognize that if the work that I'm doing today is, you know, god awfully hard, chances are someone else has work that they need to do in themselves that's probably god awfully hard as well. You know, so my whole goal there is setting up frameworks where Online on social media, you just don't see it. What do you see on social media? For women, it's he's a narcissist, he's an emotional abuser, he's this, he's that, you got to be careful. He probably kills kittens on weekends, like that's like, what comes up everywhere. For men, it's, Andrew Tate, like, hey, put that chick in her place, like you can't let women walk on you, like we everything's so polarizing and meant to be clickbait rather than content. And this is what I hope I challenge people that listen to this podcast. If the content you're listening doesn't start with, this is a sign of something you should look at from within, then disregard it as information, because then you're just becoming a judgmental human. The content all starts with 10 signs that he's of this, 10 signs that she's of that,
Well, and we
and
love to judge. This is like people watching, right? We love to judge.
Correct. God forbid that we judge ourselves first. The finger, when you point the finger outwardly, there's three fingers that point back inwardly. We rarely look at the three fingers that point back from within, but we love to point one out,
Yep.
So the content I hope to put out is more challenging the ideals of he said, she said, but rather, what do I need to look at from within? What am I lacking? What am I needing? How do I progress or better as a human? Because that's the only thing that you can truly manage and control. Everything else is just, winding up your wheels, essentially. Well, I digress. That's kind of my premise there. And I'll get into the bulk of my work so you can, because I know you asked for that vulnerable question, but I just want to set that. Is that okay if I set that?
I think that's a great frame to start with. Like the intention is to sort of take your work and help others with it. I love that.
Correct. Yeah. And I think there's a big difference in the ecosystem right now between conscious masculinity and spiritual fuckboys. There's like, because there's people that know the hot terms and they're like, oh, I'm so woke, and then they end up being like these, super weird, like painted on nails, like type humans that are like, just really like, fluid, and they're like, because I'm stable masculine. It's like, no, you probably have a lot of damage in you that you haven't yet walked through. I hope to be the conscious masculine that is entrepreneurial. What does it look like for high level executive, chief officers, entrepreneurs to step into their conscious masculinity and be these men that have to show up for work every day, not just play in the playground all day long and call themselves masculine, but show up and grind and build and are enterprise builders that actually make the world a better place. The people that are actually moving our humanity forward rather than just, spitting online and just being like this dumpster fire of a human, but in the name of healing. My journey went down the path of, where do I as a human align? Well, I want to be a good father, a good husband, and a great leader. This is like what I want to be as a person. A lot of what I did, I thought, came from childhood trauma with a bad father. My father was very abusive. My stepfather was neglectful and weird. I still remember him watching like, crime scene shows. And I used to think he was going to like murder me through poison. Like I lived a really weird home existence with male figures. My best friend's stepdad raised me from age 12 to 24. So like in the later years. And, he ended up, being very abusive and as a drinker. And I learned to dodge a punch around him. We'd be playing Nintendo, N64, Mario Kart, and I would just get nailed in the back and it'd be like making you stronger. He was raised by Clint Eastwood, so he had a bit of an interesting background as well. So then at later years, I found him, with his throat and his wrist cut in a bathtub bleeding out, and I had to call ambulances. So I thought that these male figures I never talked about in therapy
That's a
were
lot.
the issue. It is a lot,
Yeah, you said that like really fast and really smooth, but that's a big discovery.
I've worked through it pretty well, and I always had the mentality of there's other people getting raped and attacked and murdered in other countries. These are first world problems. I'm okay, kind of that leader mentality. But I learned that I should talk about these things, so I ended up opening up to somebody. In talk therapy, they go, "Hey, are you good? Hey, are you okay? Hey, let's just talk about this for hours." Through this program, Busy Gold, she actually rewires your behavioral patterns. So what I thought was the focus, which was these paternal figures, ended up not being the focus for my patterning, which I found fascinating, because you would think that that's this looks very bad. This should be it. There's got to be something here. There were some things in that, But really the patterning, the behavioral patterning that came up that was actually negative, and this will be, you know, this to me was a mind-blowing understanding. It actually came from my grandmother, my mother and my uncle, who overcompensated giving me love because they felt so bad for how I was raised as a youth.
Interesting.
Isn't that fascinating? Doesn't that blow your mind? You would never think that love would create a negative outcome or a situation that you'd have to unwire in the future. What I've learned through this process is that emotional regulation is a superpower that we have to teach our youths. I was never taught that. I was taught that if I emote, if I get big, if I'm like, whoa, someone will come to my aid and rescue, rather than sitting with myself and my emotions and understanding that if I regulate self, then I'll be able to win, or I'll get what I need or want, or whatever it is, or at least understand to process the emotion. That has been a huge unlock for me in this season, a hyper unlock, which has hurt me in relationships primarily.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably a common thing with men our age where we didn't get emotional regulation, weren't taught how to do it. Even to some extent, modeled, I wouldn't want to say incorrectly, but modeled differently than what we might choose. I grew up in a household where like big emotes were probably common now and again versus small emotes. And I think the real merit in something like emotional regulation is a small emote, right? The ability to say like, hey, that hurt in a small way has so much more power than like the rawr, like dinosaur reaction, right? And I'm really curious to hear how some of this unfolded, because this idea of overcompensating through the lens of love also sounds like a unique way to look at what is love, right? What was love, and then what is it now?
Wow, what a journey. I'm so glad that you're so astute in how you guide the conversation, because the next portion of what I learned was actually where love originated from me, right? For me. I had never had patterning or modeling of what love should look like as a male, right? So most of my love modeling came from online spaces or movies. For example, like The Notebook, or Love Actually, or Forrest Gump, or Grease, or all these other movies where there's a huge fallout, and then they stay together, they somehow are thinking about each other all the time when they're not around each other, and then they fall back in love with one another. Totally unrealistic outside of reality.
Yeah, like wildly unhealthy.
Wildly unhealthy. But I've followed that framework, and to the point where women would be like, I'm kind of freaked out. This guy like is still persisting. And I've said like, no, even though at a season, like let's say the first 90 or 60 days, a girl would be like, okay, I'm thinking about coming back. But since I was so persistent in pushing in this type of love that was modeled to me, that I saw, that I thought, oh, this is what it is. Flowers, large gestures, write letters, notes, let them know that you're still here. Ghost, literally the movie Ghost, the guy dies and comes back and tries to get Whoopi Goldberg to help him tell his wife, hey, I'm here, like it's pretty persistent, like these kind of like love models. I now know and see how unhealthy they are, and what true like boundary setting and regulation and like what that looks like, but prior to that, no idea. Or in online stages like Andrew Tate, for example, seeing love and going, well, woman is kind of a transactional thing, or women have a certain maturity point at 25. After 25, they're no longer any good. They're, processed goods after that, These ideals that I've learned through online platforms actually create a very negative construct of what the masculine is. However, they are what you see, they are what you hear, they're what are put in front of us. They're not, what's taught behind closed doors or patterned to us, but from true, actual healthy relationships is not what's publicized online or on the scapes of movie screens and everything else, because it would be boring. It wouldn't be a great movie, if you sat down and you were like, hey, honey, what's going on? I'm experiencing something right now. Awesome. Would you like me to hold space for you?
Right. It'd be a very slow moving movie.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I want you to process with me. Wonderful. Hey, you're totally good to feel. Do you want to express your emotions so we could both sit in this for a moment and then go through the process of trying to unravel it a little bit? That movie would get what? No views.
You would like change the channel right away. You're like, nope, this is too snappy.
where's the explosion, so unless the cat explodes in the living room, it's no fun, so I think that what's modeled to us in reality, or should be modeled to us in reality, and what we're subjected to for our chemical addictions and endorphin release are very different. And I hope to blur those. I hope to make a really fun platform to show people this is what emotional regulation looks like. This is what healthy construct looks like. This is what healthy masculinity and healthy femininity too. Because there's also the unhealthy feminine, the unhealthy feminine, it usually gets caught up in webs of lies with their friends or stories. They, instead of coming to the aid of their partner and being like, hey, I trust my partner, I'm with my partner, I know who they are at their character and who they truly are, they end up getting caught up in the, oh no, they're obviously this, I call them Instagram therapists. We get caught in knowing all the terms of Instagram, and then we start to become therapists for that, so I'm very passionate about this realm now in my life. I always have love heavily, and now I'm on an entire journey of finding love. I got 1 Corinthians 13 on my chest here. It's because I think it's the best representation of what love is through the Christian scripture. I love that verse. I read it several times a day to recenter myself. I'm excited to see Buddhist ideals for what love are. I'm excited to see what other parts of our planet say love is, and the different representations and amalgamations of what love is. Because I think most people on the planet are trying to find love at their core, in one format or another: love of life, love of purpose, love of another person or human, love of self. We're all seeking love. I think it's the most powerful energy in the known universe. There's nothing greater than love, I think.
So here's what's interesting about the way that you describe that, and I align with much of it. The pursuit that we are on, certainly love, in so many ways, man. The love expression can fit into the work environment. It can fit into friendship. It can fit into romance. And also, I think most of us are in our own way because we're pursuing something that is completely disconnected from what we might actually want. So when we say we want love, we think, well, I've got to go make $1 million to do that. Or if I want to really feel passionate about my work, I've got to get in the best shape of my life. And because we're playing this game of, rather than pursue what is most meaningful to us, and therefore the pursuit of love, we go to the adjacent and nearest next comfortable thing, or next maybe within awareness thing. Like, I'm going to be a really successful person. I'm going to be a really successful man. I'm going to be a really sexy woman. I'm going to be a really good friend. And it's been interesting to kind of follow the lane of emotional reactivity, because the only way to be better at emotional reactivity in the practical sense is to be aware in the moment enough to make a new choice. And awareness takes a tremendous amount of practice and time. And just like I want to pursue love, you got to be aware of that too.
Yeah, I think you hit a lot of wonderful topics there. And I have to say that you really do have to test these things in the moment, in the act of, and what you said is fascinating. And you are so wonderfully landing the plane. I can't even express how beautiful your brain is. Although we say we want love, not many people really take the time to decipher where that comes from, that definition of Example, my idea of love, or in relationship, let's just bring this up for myself. I'm just going to use me as an example. I want love. I love love. I can't wait to find that life partner that we go through it thick and thin, and we are both hungry for problem solving, and we figure out issues. And, we're both just like, hey, no matter what happens, we're going to get on the other side of it because we believe in each other's teamwork and each other's true character, right? Cannot wait for that. However, in relationship, I've heard several times, Reef, it feels very chaotic being with you sometimes. Like 95% of the time you're wonderful, 5% of the time there's weird chaos happening. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Everything's fine. Now I know to be like, tell me more. What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? What do you mean chaos? What does that mean to you? How do you feel? Like, like really being curiosity of what your partner's feeling. I just had a talk with a gorgeous girl out here, that was expressing like her ex and what was happening, and then how I showed up to the conversation. Like, you guys are starkly different, like night and day, and I was like, thank you for that. It's a compliment. I'm working on it, but in that, it being in the curiosity of how are you feeling? Like, what are you experiencing in that? For me, since I was raised in such a chaotic household, it makes me a really good entrepreneur because I can manage entrepreneurship well. You can handle the chaos of reality when things are thrown at you, at your plate, at your whatever, and you're just like, I got to figure this out. The other side of that coin is when your relationship and you're building chaos to somebody who wasn't raised in chaos, and maybe they're down here more placid, even though you may be here, to them, this here variant might be the difference between the house is on fire and everything is fine. So really being curious about your partner and what their definition is of these things, and defining what love truly is. Like, if someone has a definition of love, what does that look like? Where does that come from? Because you said it well, we modeled and we're patterned in its safety. So somewhere something was modeled to us that chemically, what I'm learning through this program, chemically is a snapshot at a young age that we define to certain things to our future. So for me, love and relationship might look like very chaotic, a lot of moving around, pushing and pulling, which is a horrifically toxic trait. But once I see it and I can see it, then I can rewire it and undo it, because now I can see a new definition of what intimacy, closeness, and relationship truly are. And sadly, it's kind of a catch-22. Not sadly, just is. Let's not put an emotional context to it. What is fact or true is that youth see their parent figures for survival as the people that hold truth. Ergo, if they show you XYZ for love, you start to create XYZ for love. So chemically, your dependency to love becomes that. That's your chemical signature to that. So as you get older, you find yourself recreating that XYZ for love, because that's what was modeled to you. Because in order for us to survive as babies, we have to see our parents as truth. And we cannot see them to be people that would do anything wrong to us or for us, that we just think they're just doing great to us, because in our naivety or just survival techniques, we only know them to be something that would take care of us. We're supposed to be wired that way for pairing and to survive. So all this has been very interesting for me. I am captivated by this subject matter. I love it. And it's been very good. The modeling, the chemical, what that modeling looks like, what the actual curiosity of what other people's definitions and terms are for the same things, and figuring that out, rewiring that, and really diving deep into self to figure out what are the contexts of your own definition and where do they come from and how do they amalgamize now as an adult.
Dude, this is really good. And I want to spend a little time on the segue between relationship chaos and business chaos, because the central theme is the person. I definitely was a person where chaos felt like home. And in that chaos, I could function. Whether we understand the reasoning for it or not, we can look back at history, patterns, traumas. We can look at home. We can look at school. We can look at sports. Regardless, chaos felt like home to me. And it was interesting to do a lot of this kind of work, different medium, but similar theme, because what started to happen is I started to yearn, the goal, like love, for peace. So I used to yearn for peace. And as much as I would pursue that, I was completely unaware of this at the time. I would pursue it. And in the pursuit of it, I would create more chaos. And that felt like home. So even though I felt like I was working towards peace, I was not only perpetuating chaos, but I didn't understand a core theme. And that was that when I experienced peace, I didn't feel comfortable. It actually did not feel peaceful. So then I would just nuke it and bomb it. And part of that journey for me has largely been in business. It's also been in relationships, but I think in business, even more prevailing, where I've actually had to learn to be comfortable with peace. I've had to learn to sit still and acknowledge that I feel good in peace. And then I have also had to do the like underwriting and unlearning of, man, I'm like making more chaos right now. I'm making it way harder than it needs to be. And I'm doing that in an attempt to feel at home. So I've almost had to like migrate where home is. I wanted home to be in peace, but home was chaos, and I had to make peace home and let go of chaos. Now I think with a lot more awareness, getting much better at these choices in the moment to rewrite behavior, what I can kind of identify is when chaos is coming, now I can tell that it makes me uncomfortable. I don't want it. I want peace. So I've made some of that transition. Perfect? Definitely not. But there is something about entrepreneurs who are like, we're often born into chaotic environments and thrive in them. And then we perpetuate that in business, which largely messes up our relationship. It fucks up our business, and our team feels the brunt of it. Is that your story too?
I'm writing notes down as you go because you have a lot of great talking points here that I'm resonating with wonderfully. And I have enough context on this now after 4 months of studying it deeply that I feel very well. I don't want to be a person that steps into a space without feeling mastery, you know. It's one of my biggest issues with online gurus or coaches that are like, this is how you do it. Without having a real sense of mastery over a subject matter. So I've done a deep dive of reading a book a week in the last 4 months and content and taking in information and talking to practitioners. This young lady, Busy Gold, is the best in the world at what she does, you know? And I went for what's best in the world. No matter what the price point was, I want you to work on my brain because it's the most important thing we have. The brain is the only organism in the known universe that's named itself. Let's just call it
interesting.
You know, the stomach wasn't like, I'm a stomach, you know, the kidney wasn't like, call me kidney, you know, the brain is literally self-actualizing and says, you know what? We're going to call ourselves brain. How you feel about that? We're going to call that universe, you know? That's a rock. Like it's the most interesting organism we have in the known universe, you know? So if I'm going to have someone pour into my brain, I want to make sure that it's someone that I can trust and that has past experience with this, you know? The notes that I put here that are to me most fascinating out of what you said, and I want to start with just number one, congratulating you as a male. I don't think us men congratulate each other enough for the hard work we do internally. You know, there's a space for women, I think, that's more readily acceptable, and women are like, hey, they just don't do the work. Men see the work that we do. Just in society as a whole alone, men and women have two very different demographics to grow by, you know. As men, we have to earn our role in society. We are forced to push our role and make our role known and be there. Women, it's kind of given and earned, you know, like you're a princess from the day you're born. Father's there for you. For most of us, you know, this is really generalized, but women have and men have two very societally different structures. And I think women, if they look at men through their lens, they won't understand us. Just as men, if we look at women through our lens, we won't understand them, you know, because we have two different battles that we're fighting through society. As women, you know, women are like, hey, I need to figure this out. And who's going to help me? You know, men, I need to figure this out. I need to help me, you know, kind of situation, right? Like I won't have somebody come to my aid or rescue more readily available than a woman will have someone come to their aid or rescue, you know. A woman is told from a young age, you're already valuable the way you are. Like you're already, you know, a princess, a queen, someone needs to treat you right or treat you well. Where a man, we are from day one taught, you know, you have to work for everything that you have and you get, you know. So there's very interesting dichotomy here. And what's happening in our society, in my belief and what I'm observing, is that women are viewing men through their lens rather than trying to step into a man's lens. And men are trying to help women through their lens rather than trying to step into a woman's lens and really understand the feminine and the masculine and how they're actually curated or behaviorally trained in our society. Once you unlock a little bit of that, then you're able to see, this is a very interesting, beautiful thing that we have before us, but it requires a lot of context and a lot of communication, a lot of conversation. Because even just, you know, the frame of lens being different, you also have to think different backgrounds, different upbringings, you know, then different societal structures and different racial backgrounds. Like now it becomes infinitely complex. So it does take a lot of communication, proper communication, peace, understanding, and curiosity. More than anything, curiosity. The moment you can be curious for another person's journey is the moment you find true empathy, love, and peace, because there's no longer judgment, but rather you're a very complex, beautiful human. Where does all that come from? Let's start playing with that box. We could actually, you know what? You and I, for a lifetime, delve in this box. We can delve into this box for a very long time because there's so much to unravel here if we're curious enough, you know? So that I just want to congratulate you on that for actually taking the step and the process and the work as a man to want to be that better man, you know? I'm going to share Busy Gold's information with you. I think you'll really enjoy her as a practitioner. She's absolutely amazing. Life-changing work. I'd love to hear some of the works that you've done as well, and kind of share notes, because I'm very happy to be with other men or talk to other men that are willing to put in the hard work to make a better next generation. We are the creators of the next generation. The work that you and I do now will impact the next 2, 5, or 10 generations of our family, our bloodline, and they will then pour into the generations around them and will be leaders in their own right. So what we're doing is not just today's work, it's God's work, it's future work, it's the universe's work, it's what we're called to do as work as men. And I think if women and men focused on that, we'd have a very beautiful next generation. That's just my congratulations. Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you. Here with you, brother. Yeah, thank you for being great. I'm honored to be in your presence. The chaos thing, yes. I come from a very chaotic background, so I feel comfortable in chaos. Dan Martell says it well, you know, business owners that are built in chaos do incredibly well. But in relationship, they may struggle, you know, but we do very well with a lot of, that's why our company could be on fire, but we're like, okay, what's the next step?
Yeah. No, here we go. Another Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's on fire? Tuesday. You know, like imagine the guy that was like in charge of the World Trade Center, you know, on 9/11. 9/12, he probably showed up to work like, well, this is weird, you know? Yep. This is gonna be a bad day, you know? But if he was raising chaos, he'd be like, we just lost a tower. What do we do next? You know, I think what you spoke about with peace was fascinating in the sense that and this is through this practitioner. So when you talk to her and you go through this thing, it'll be a very different context. Just imagine another modality of learning things, right? What I have are called strongman scripts. You know, essentially, I think this type of way. You know, like what a strongman means is to be X, Y, Z, A, B, C, right? And I have it here. Then you have a mechanism. And then that mechanism that comes out will create a problem, you know? And then you have the dangling carrot. So the dangling carrot is like, what are you anchoring to? Like, what do you want for this? Me, a lot of them are peace. So when I think about responding or reacting in a moment and being in my, you know, deregulated emotional space, I have to anchor back to peace because I really like peace. I didn't know peace. I remember April, I sat in bed, and this after a whole bunch of stuff had just happened. And it was a Saturday, and I felt this sense of peace for a few seconds. First time in my life of 30 plus years, 36 years, where I felt peace on my heart. And I thought, is this, even just talking about it makes me take a deep breath. It's interesting. I was like, is this what peace is? I feel peaceful right now. You know, this is an interesting space. And then it went away. Then I started really practicing to find peace and learning different modalities for peace. Then I started getting an hour, half hour, a couple minutes. Now I'm going weeks of time through this space of peace that was never available to me before. And it feels like a superpower, you know, like it feels like I'm so proud of myself and so like happy for what I've accomplished through this journey, you know, and that peace is a gift that I'll hand to so many people around me because it centers everyone around you. To have someone in their masculine, strong, powerful business owner, impacting community, feeding people around the world, and still being able to bring peace and tranquility to those around him, you're a juggernaut. You're an unstoppable force, you know, someone that can't be unwavered or unmoved. So my anchor is peace, reputation. Like, how am I being perceived by others? What am I doing? What kind of impact am I leaving? Those are the type of anchors that bring me back to reality if I feel any kind of sense of me having to escalate on somebody. I had a great example this weekend. I took some kids out paddleboarding down a river, and one of the people that was renting me the paddle boards made it really difficult for me to get the paddle boards with signatures and everything. Old me would have been somewhere along the lines of, not proud of myself here, but just as an example, what are you doing? Like, you know, this is a minimum wage working employee. Who cares? You know, like they're like, you're a mouth breather type of activity, you know, like really just missing the person's humanity, you know, not fair to them. Instead, now it's like, okay, this human being is doing their job. How can I best work with this person to get a desired result? Or what do I need to do in order to get on the other side of this? Because my end goal is to build peace. I want this person to remember me as someone, no matter how difficult things got, I still showed up with peace. Not a people pleaser, not walked on, firm, assertive, peaceful. I need to get this done right now. You're standing in the way between me getting that done. How can we best accomplish this together right now? Let's problem solve. And if we can't problem solve, then we don't have a conversation here. Is that fair? Awesome. Now we know each other's boundaries. Let's move forward.
Yeah, I can appreciate the boundary. Last comment there about boundaries in particular. There's a great book by Chris Voss that talks about find your no. Never Split the Difference. He was a great hostage negotiator. Great book.
Love that book.
And I also very much agree that when we step in and lead a team, if we are chaotic, we will duplicate chaotic behaviors inside of the business, which when leaders can handle chaos, that's different than being chaotic, right? We still want to be grounded. We still want to be methodical. And I'll use the word slow, meaning thoughtful. And I think I've been through seasons where I'm more aligned with go slow, be intentional, be at peace so that the business can. And then I've certainly hit my chaos. One thing I did early on, though, when I was leading teams, is I did not look for my chaotic impact. I didn't pay attention to it. What do you do to make sure that you are monitoring your own impact with people? Are you asking for feedback? Are you more attentive and aware to them being in chaos? If you are, do you just monitor yourself? Like, how do you think about your impact, chaotic or peaceful, with your team?
What you just said is very powerful. What you model does become the people around you, so very well said. You are creating replicas or leaving remnants of you with everywhere you go to. We are all stardust in one format or another, and we're leaving a little bit of dust of ourselves as a signature on other people's hearts and other people's minds as we engage with them, because voice and sounds and waves are still an energy, right? There's still something that goes out there. As we're learning through the quantum field, that an energy is still a particle at the smallest sense. So when you're saying something and it lands in someone's ear and it goes to them, you're leaving a bit of your stardust with them. That has made a huge impact for me, that the stardust I leave in someone else's heart or someone else's mind will resonate with them for a very long time. Isn't that interesting? Like, what kind of dust are you leaving in the heart of others? Like what essence of you do you leave with others? That has helped me greatly. Waking up in the morning, and I tend to talk to myself in the mirror every morning. And it used to be, Reef, you're amazing, you're awesome, you're a great guy, you're capable of doing anything you set your mind to, which are all true. But now my practices are more going in front of the mirror and saying, hey, Reef, you're a peaceful man, you're kind, you're tranquil, you're stable, you're grounded, you're rooted. These things help me set my intentions for the day as I walk through the day, just like anybody else would, but making different choices, hopefully, through that.
It's a big difference.
It's a huge difference. Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate you. It's crazy how a little bit of verbiage can change that for a person. It can really change the trajectory of how you operate. The feedback one has been very good. I asked for consistent feedback. I had a conversation with some people yesterday after the river, and we were talking about ideals and work and business and building. And I asked, how did I show up in this conversation? What was your overall take of me? Kind of like almost an intake form or an audit, and it was a lot of very good, awesome, kind, you really landed the message. However, I did hear some things of very strong, like forceful masculine, like energetically, like pushing that line. And I realized that's something that I do have to taper in myself, because when it comes to business, my idea is you push through everything, you push through the thick and thin, no matter what. So getting feedback from people around me and how I land has been very good. As I've been dating, I've, the young ladies that I'm with, I'm like, hey, how did this land? How was that for you? What did you hear there? To hear a woman say you're grounded, centered, masculine, it's very beautiful. Or I've never met a man like you before, or someone that's as conscious about their masculinity as you. It does something to the ego, and you get this feedback that goes, I'm on the right track here. What was different from you there? And the curiosity goes on to unravel. What was different? What did you observe differently? You cared. You asked questions. You wanted to know how I felt energetically or emotionally. No one's ever done that before. You held space for me. I told you something or a boundary, and instead of you pushing that boundary, you expressed why that boundary is so important. Like, you backed my boundary. And I think it was a young lady here that is from Los Angeles, absolutely beautiful, right? Girl in Los Angeles, went through a 6-year-long relationship. She's going through a breakup as of December. I was going through mine, whatever, what have you. And the first conversations we had were like, man, you're really cool. And we get each other. We met each other at a health food store, like, where all the things are non, red 40, no toxic chemicals, any of that. And, she was making sourdough bread, out of all things. I was like, funny story. You make sourdough bread? I eat sourdough bread. How's that for a pairing, huh? So she made me a loaf of sourdough as a gift. Ended up, catching up communication, and we set immediately a boundary. We're like, hey, I'm healing. I'm going through a healing journey. And I'm not really open to anything, too serious, or, really trying to get my heart involved in anything because of this healing. And, she expressed that, and I was like, likewise, I'm in a very healing journey, and it's good for people to be through that healing journey. Let's communicate that and be okay with that healing. And let's energetically just be and enjoy each other's company to where we feel comfortable, and express to each other what feels comfortable and uncomfortable, or what's too far or not far enough, so that we continue sharpening our tools here during our learning and healing journey, and it created such a safe atmosphere of we can just be us. And it made it so carefree, because even she'll joke around like, oh, there's my unhealed way, or like I'll say something and go, that's definitely a pattern of my past. Can I retry that again? And literally just kind of test this over and over again, just from being authentic and vulnerable and honest. Yeah, it's been good.
So Reef, I love this. And I want to know your take on this application in business, because I think this relationship piece has really good application in business, but it has to skew a little bit. In the business sense, leading a team like this, you've got a team and you help teams lead better teams. There's a degree of like, we want our teams to feel safe. We want our team to be authentic. And there's some extent of, we want our teams in the professional space to be able to assert some boundaries. There's also room for too much of that. There's also room for like, do you not want to uphold the demands of the business or the culture that we have, right? How do you find that middle line of helping someone see that they can be safe and they can express their lines and share safely with the group, and also still maintain a business and still hold like, this is our standard, this is our system, this is how it works, and we're going to have some tolerance, but sure, you must get these things done?
That's a great question. So I had a great person come into my business a couple months last year, and in that, one thing to anchor to are core values. When you have strong core values that you can hold, not core values that you just write because you want to write them out and it looks good on your presentation and you want people to read them and think, wow, these core values are so, neat. Rather, core values that are actually fireable offenses, integrity, commitment,
like they're crunchy, right? Is that what I hear? Like they're crunchy, like they're an action, not just a theme.
Crunchy is a great word that you can stand behind them. You can say, if you are upholding this, you're in, because it is my boundary box of what happens if you go outside of that boundary. For example, if you don't withhold the boundary of being with an integrity and you find someone lying, they've overstepped that boundary. There's no room for, hey, what's happening here? It is, we've lied. You can do 2 to 3 tries, obviously, of like, hey, is this a behavioral pattern of yours? Why lie? Don't do it again, and unwire that and rewire that or work backwards from that. But only if that person is willing and open to the work. And you know what that looks like? If the person has feedback and they're willing to do the work, You can believe in them for as long as you're willing to as a threshold. I probably believe in people far more than I should, but I'm also someone that likes to develop people. I enjoy watching people go from here to here. It does something to my ego, being a part of that transformation of somebody, because someone's done that for me so many times. I would love to be a part of that story for others. But having good core values that you can set as a block is really good. And we do have boundaries that WeAssist and the people that I have around me, but I do also like to develop people. So you do have that fine dance of where do you let someone go and where do you hold on to them. Having good, strong core values that are fireable offenses is a great way to set that in business, to say, this is the line that you don't pass. This is the line that you don't pass. This is the line that you don't pass. And you know that already. You already know what that looks like as a standard. You already know what that looks like to be an A player, to complete. Like one of ours is one more, like one more family to feed, one more opportunity, one more call, one more lead. So if you finish your day and your quota was 20, better have 21, because that's that one more, like, that's already a standard. You're going that one extra step. So that's helped me in the business aspect. Learning boundaries is something that, and I have to be very vulnerable here, I was not set boundaries as a youth, so I have trouble with boundaries.
Like setting them?
I've had trouble with setting boundaries and
same.
respecting boundaries.
Yeah, same.
Period. Why? Because as a youth, my family saw me so hurt that they placated to me. So they didn't teach me boundaries of emotions or no, or you can't do this or you can't do that. It was, hey, let's be here for you because you've had such a hard childhood.
That's the overcompensation.
Correct, my friend. Correct. In doing that, it has literally crushed the way that I see boundaries. And it's actually gotten me into legal trouble. I don't see laws the same way as people. I think I can get out of anything kind of deal, Like, you have to be very careful with the people that come from that rubric if you don't check it, because those are the people that end up in jail. They end up, arrested because they just,
like the rules don't apply to me.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that was very eye-opening to me. Like, that opened my heart and mind to a completely different view of boundaries and what boundaries look like. And now not only do I respect other people's boundaries, but I step into that boundary with them and I'm curious about them. Why are you choosing that boundary? Where does that boundary come from? And what? Because also, boundaries can't just be thrown out by somebody and be like, that's my boundary, because it's a very big defense mechanism.
Yes. Yeah.
You get to ask the hard questions of, where does that boundary come from?
Yeah. Help me understand.
Help me understand. Right. That's a great, I love that phrase. Help me understand, like, what is that boundary for you? Is it a hurt place? Is it coming from a wounded feminine, a wounded masculine? Is it coming from a hurt inner child? Or is it a boundary that's truly to protect you right now? Do you have a perceived danger? What is that danger? Why does that danger exist for you? Where did you learn this in the past that this gave you a negative consequence? Or where did you learn in the past that it gives you a positive consequence? Who allowed you to do this in your past, right? Who made this permissible for you? Who made this not permissible for you? So you have a series of questions that you can ask somebody to also help them understand, is my boundary rational or irrational? Am I setting a boundary from a safe, healthy, loving place? Or am I setting a boundary from a protected, dangerous, wounded place, of needing perceived safety or security? And that creates, again, more conversation. The curiosity of the universe is beautiful, be in wonderment of all things, because it leads to so much more depth and beauty of self, other people, all that. Yeah.
Yeah. I also struggled with boundaries, and something I've learned lately, in the last couple of years, has been that you learn a lot about a person when you say no, when you set a boundary.
Yeah.
And admittedly, like, I didn't know how to set them, to probably a similar token of you. Like, I'm just going to build my own world and I'm going to do my best, and I can find my way through. But also, I don't think I knew me enough to know where my boundaries were. I didn't understand that the boundary was essentially the edge of my own inner peace. And beyond that was me entering back into chaos. So I didn't know how to say, like, I don't want to venture into that right now. I don't want to go to the elephant graveyard, Simba. I'm staying here. And then I also didn't feel safe enough internally to handle what could happen when someone does not respect it, or does not tolerate it, or doesn't like it. Because not everyone's going to like a no. Not everyone's going to like a boundary. And I think I've learned specifically how to notice the difference between someone that respects a boundary and is curious about a boundary versus someone that will never respect or be curious about a boundary. Like, and those are polar opposites because there's a middle ground, but I've experienced both sides, and I can just very much appreciate the leadership quality and the work it takes to be able to bring boundaries in those conversations to the workplace. I think it's hard in relationships. It's much more dynamic in a workplace because you have more people, right? It's not just two people trying to figure it out. It's like it can be a whole team of people.
Yeah. Well said. I mean, I think to what you said there about the boundary setting and having someone and being able to set boundaries myself, I historically just have not. I didn't respect myself enough. I didn't love myself enough to set boundaries. I didn't know what that looked like. And I prioritize, and here's kind of the catch-22. I would prioritize my employees or significant other in a relationship and try to give them everything I could to the best of my ability, even in a self-sacrificial way. And at the end, I would still be called these horrendous, horrific names by people, right? And it felt, no victim scripting here, just data to take in. What am I doing that's creating that? Well, the feminine, the masculine dance, right, if you will, or even in a relational work sense, there has to be a sense of boundary setting for respect building and also create polarity of pull that also shows like, hey, you're a person in power. I can't do this, where if you give carte blanche and you say whatever you want, whenever you want, there could create this comfortability that actually takes away that sense of respect and that boundary that's built, right? So there is a dance of, hey, I'm not accepting that, in a loving way. You can still set.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't have to be hostile.
For me, for example, in relationship, because that's what the journey that I'm on as I'm learning through all this, is the last 4-month study, is I would not set a boundary in a relationship because I prioritize relationship over
self.
Right. So for me, it was, I'm going to do everything I can to keep the sanctity of this relationship before setting a boundary for myself, because I want to make sure that the relationship is sacred and doing well. And I believe if you have two people in that realm that honor the relationship, but are also setting their own boundaries to make sure the relationship is healthy, it's a great dynamic, And I think that that's what creates a beautiful partnership. Two people that see the relationship as the beautiful third entity that it is, like a child that you must care for and take care of and nurture as you both are exploring yourselves. And in exploring yourselves, you're holding the hand of the other person and saying, hey, I have this interesting thing within me. I want to show you because I trust you. Don't weaponize it ever, but I want to show you where this is in my humanity. Can we journey into that together? Boom. That's true intimacy and depth of learning one another. And then that opens the door for the other person to say, let me show you the depths of my heart and where I feel what I'm experiencing, and then be able to journey that together. Learning the depths of each other more deeply allows you to have more empathy for one another, empathy for yourself. Understand that you're not the only one that's broken. They're just as broken. They're showing you their scars, same, but different, And then that creates a true, I think, healing, loving space for two people.
It's funny hearing you talk about this because we're walking very similar paths. The way I would articulate what you just shared is that former Aaron was a people pleaser and put the relationship, the things, like everything above self.
Yeah.
And in doing that, there were not respectable boundaries. There were not lines that held him intact. And this is friendship. This is platonic. This is business. Like it's all of it. Then through work and digging and practice and failure and all the above, I've also come to believe that two givers become very powerful with boundaries. A giver almost taps into what giving is really about when they are able to set boundaries. And two givers that both have boundaries make for a really dynamic couple. I really, really love the way you articulate that. And I think the process in relationship, even though that is your focus, is similar to many of the processes that we have to go through to evolve. So here's the root of this question and why I ask it. To be able to look in the mirror, to be able to acknowledge that you might be the problem. Where we started this conversation was, hey, like this pattern happened 4 or 5 times, and it wasn't until 4 or 5 that I looked in the mirror. That to me is the theme of getting out of your own way. That sometimes the work ahead of us is internal or behind us in some ways. but it's
Yeah.
largely us. And it takes a degree of humility, a degree of commitment, like all these things. For
Yeah.
someone listening that maybe is not where they want, maybe doesn't have what they want, the relationship they want, the business they want, the money they want, they're looking around and listening right now to
Yeah.
us. What message would you give them so that they are encouraged to gently look in the mirror and to gently work inward rather than to look for the outward example of change?
Anything outside of you being in the answer is a deflection of self-responsibility. Period.
Pew pew.
And like anything outside of you is a deflection of responsibility. If you find the answer in someone else, you're the problem, this is the problem, that's the problem, whatever else is a problem, my environment's the problem, you're taking away from you're deflecting away from the true core. Well, I chose that environment. Well, I chose that person. Well, there's every one of these can be tied back to self. The moment you take away you from the equation, you're setting yourself up for failure immediately. So if anybody's listening to this and they're like, hey, what's happening here? What's going on? It's very simply the moment that it's no longer you, you're deflecting from the true problem. You're focusing on the other person's healing, the other person's problem. They're this, they're that. Don't come to me with your story about the other person. I'll share this quick tidbit. I had a person that called me and she said, I'm going to break up with my boyfriend. That's it. And I've now, in the last 4 months, I've rescued 4 relationships and brought 5 men to a healing journey, which I'm very excited for, and and that's only in 4 months of me just practicing these modalities. Wait until I get up to full speed. I will impact world because I'm an impactful human and that's what I do. I'm excited for that. This lady called me, beautiful young lady, great guy. And the conversation literally started with an eruption of emotion, as one does when they're in a high tense situation, And I stopped the conversation and said, hey, do you want support right now just for me to listen? Or would you like me to give you feedback or see where we could work on this together? Thought about it for a moment and said, yeah, I'd love the feedback. Fine. Reluctantly almost, but understanding that she needs that. She was self-aware enough to say, I know I need that, I was like, look, I won't be your friend here that just listens to you berate or victimize yourself or make the other person look bad. I'm not that type of friend. I never will be. So you can never call me for that. I just am not that support structure. That as a boundary I set, for people around me. I also have another boundary of if the person's not in the room, I won't share their name unless they're there to talk. That's a boundary, because they can't defend themselves. Let's talk about other bigger ideas, or let's talk about self before we talk about anybody else, Thank you. You know that your name will be safe in a room with me, Aaron. So you're there, right? So with her, asked her simply, what evidence do you have of them being a good person? You seem to have a lot of evidence towards the negative. Do they have good quality traits? Yeah, Okay, great. On a percentage, let's just say the last 2 years that you've been in a relationship, what's the percent that you see there? Like 90-10, 40-60, 60-40. They're, in a heightened state, they said 70-30. Okay. That's good. You have 70-30. That's a beautiful place to be. So they're really not all that evil, right? Right. My question that always grounds relationships back to core is very simple. Do you love this person? Yes. Okay. Do you believe in their ability, or are they willing to do the work? Yes. Okay. Do you believe in their ability to do the work and overcome it? Yes. Then there's no more questions. Now you have to get back into you. Who do I need to be, or how can I help this person unlock this within themselves? What do I need to do? How can I show up? If I see this person has a need, I see a person in the water and they're drowning and I have a life preserver in my hand, throw it. I'm a jerk,
Right. This is for me.
How do I get it to them, So looking introspectively, we sat on the phone for maybe an hour and she was able to talk her way down the cliff by me asking just questions and saying, okay, now how do we show up? It ended with, as soon as this person comes back, show them love. Like, what if you stood in front of your man today and he came back and he's obviously in a triggered state and you said, I love you. I just want to let you know that I think you're an amazing man and I'm so lucky to have you in my life. And I couldn't imagine my future without you. I'm so fortunate to have such a powerful, beautiful male in my life. And I can't wait for both of us to grow even more in our femininity and masculinity. Maybe that person's still triggered. but you know that you're showing up with love. So if they're still triggered, you can easily set a boundary. Hey, you know what? I think you should go on another walk for an hour, like you just did a moment ago, or 20 minutes, get some breath, because I'm trying to show up in love here. And I only want you to come back to the table if you're willing to show up in love and for us to
Love
build our
that.
future together. That's my boundary. If you're not ready to respect that boundary or have a loving conversation, then we're not ready to sit and talk about this. But I only want to build love with you. And that's a fair boundary that'll make someone walk away and think. But if you do say that and that person softens in the moment and they're like, wow, thank you for seeing me. You've done your job. You've shown up in love and created a space where you're both loving on each other and see each other through each other's behaviors. The patterns are patterns that we have in us from past. They're going to happen, right? They're going to happen for all people.
Part of this serenity, this peace, and what I know matters a lot to you is helping others and impacting people. So let's just kind of wrap with a brief. I want to hear like what WeAssist is doing and how you've essentially made impact into your business. And then let's keep that part short, because then I have a follow-up question about for everyone else's benefit as you share a little bit about how that happened.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I think you had said something about character, like the people pleasing thing. And that was very helpful for me, because the people pleasing thing, to me, one of the things to do is like ground yourself, right? What are the questions that you, like earlier, peace, love, I want to be known for these things. Like those are the things I keep to remind myself to stay tranquil throughout the day, because that's how I want to be known. The character one helped me with the people pleasing in relationship. Why? Because a person of character can't people please. A people pleaser is not a person of character. A person that people pleases says yes to all things around them. A person of character is who they are when they are. So if you want to be referred to as a person of character, of high character and high value, then we must be a person that stays true to our message and doesn't shift that message according to the people we have around us. That's helped me. And I want to share that with you, because we were talking about that a second ago, and that's changed my life. Being like, hey, I'm a man of character in relationship, out of relationship, in business, anywhere. I am who I say I am, no matter what, right? Rather than depending on the group or the community, I change and shift and bend and mold. There's some room for that, of course. You get to, adaptability is key. You don't want to be like this weird stifling person in a room that's like, weird. But you also have to, some core ideals, and you can't go to one group of people and say, I love hunting. Another group of people say, I'm not a hunter, that's not character, but saying that, hey, I am a hunter to a group of non-hunters, and expressing, here's why I think it's special and how it pours back into community, and how hunters are the only ones that donate to preservation of land. And if it worked the other way around, then the non-hunters would raise more money, but somehow it's the hunters that raise the most amount of money. Isn't that an interesting fact? Then you can bring knowledge and data and information to a conversation, rather than make an opposing, contradicting view that makes people hate you, So there's ways of delivery. You asked me about WeAssist. WeAssist, we're feeding people around the world. We're an impact enterprise. We're international headhunters. My mission statement for WeAssist is to feed as many people around the world as humanly possible through equally advantageous opportunities, so that everyone feels like they're coming out winning at the end of the day and transacting. A core pillar of WeAssist is education. So we actually tie our education into our 13-month salary bonus and how we bonus our professionals. My value there is I want to make generational change. My personal mission statement, that was my company mission statement. My personal mission statement is to make the world a better place so that future generations can answer some of the questions that we haven't yet answered. So we get to give them a better platform, right? So that they can stand on this and answer. We've been given the cell phone. We've been given computers, internet, combustion engine. What will we give to the next generation? So being a part of that bigger process is beautiful. My North Guiding Star, character-wise, is how do my inputs today impact the next 2, 5, or 10 generations? So I created education to WeAssist because I believe that that's a great way to improve education or the next level of education. Example being, allowing people to have their work from home, to be with their kids, I think the fabric of family needs to come back to the home dynamic. I actually think it should be more tribal. I think people should raise their kids in groups of 5, 10, 15, 20, because that's how we did it before. I think that's a way more beautiful way of doing it. Everyone kind of learning and growing with everyone in their group. And hopefully my goal there is that that'll keep kids from coming home and having to pee in a kitty litter box, or bark like a dog or meow like a cat, and think that they're so confused that they feel like a feline or canine. I think there's a huge depravity, like a World War III happening to our social structure as humans, that I really want to fight against. And the educational part is teaching people the more you learn, the more you earn. Not in a weird Fugazi fictitious, like if I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, then I'll have a Lambo in 10 years, but literally in a year's time span, by sharing ideals on emotional intelligence, agreeing to disagree, having hard conversations, financial literacy, child development, behavioral patterning, conditioning, all these things that we as entrepreneurs, you and I, are pretty, hungry to. Most people after high school or college don't care to keep growing and learning. So if I'm able to attach that to a salary or bonus structure of some sort, I believe that it'll make even if it makes a 0.5% impact in someone's future, I've done a good job. And if I could do that over a larger spread, then I feel like I'm impacting our future generations and making the world a better place. So WeAssist does international headhunting. We do HR, recruitment, monitoring. We find the right players for you. We put them in place, make sure that they're the right fit. But a huge core ideal of WeAssist is the education. And the education is actually what makes a better player. They're kinder. They're easier to work with. They are more rational. They're more cognitive. They're not as emotionally explosive. So it helps all the way around. And then they teach those ideals to their youth and so on to the next generation, hopefully.
Okay. So you've figured out something really important. You figured out how to make purpose practical. So here's the question that I want to finalize our conversation today with. For the person that is sitting and listening and saying, I've been taught, I feel pulled into the world where practicality comes way before purpose, where the demands of the world are centralized and prioritized. And I just can't see a way to take my impact and weave it into my business. I just had a conversation with somebody earlier today about this. How do I weave the impact that I want to have into my business? There's a lot of ways to go with this. What I want to start with is just a practical step, the step that you could say to somebody, this is how you begin that process. Because I know it can be a long journey to actually make it real.
So I'm going to reiterate, because I believe in active listening. I want to make sure I land this correctly or answer this question. It seems like a big one. What's the first functional step to taking your purpose or impact and making it practical? Like, how do you apply it? Day one. The simplest answer to that, as I check in with myself, what comes up to me is do. Just do, right? By executing, you'll find what's working and not working. Take steps in a direction, any given direction, as long as it's a direction. What's the worst thing that happens? You figure it out. One way or another, you're going to figure something out. Whether it works or doesn't work, you're figuring it out, right? If you're looking for a more esoteric or more wider breadth answer, I would say doing a multitude of functions. I've been a cook. I've been a server. I've been a snowboard, surf, rock climbing instructor. I've worked at a CVS, at a Rite Aid. I've scooped ice cream for a living. I've done construction. I have sold cars. I have sold mortgage. I have, if I told you the number of jobs that I've had in a lifetime career or hobbies, I used to sell glow sticks at raves for maybe $8K a month. I did Uber from 4 a.m. to 9 a.m. and all the way to 10 p.m. or midnight. I sold water bottles at events. I've gone to the 99-cent store and bought 99-cent sunscreen and filled up backpacks and sold them for $10 a pop at the beach to make money. Like, I have worked a plenitude of different functionalities that have spatially helped me look at the world through a different lens. Marketing director of Jersey Mike's, Domino's Pizza, you name it. So try a plenitude of different things. I enjoy rock climbing, snowboarding, surfing. I've gotten my certification now for sailing. My scuba certification, skydiving. I am working on my pilot's license. I'm learning dance, 2 different dance disciplines. What else am I doing? Piano. I continuously test my brain and kind of play with it to keep the plasticity, but you're learning something new all the time. I don't know if I would have ever created a company for education with HR and payroll. Think about that. Like you have to, what do I want to do? Create education and help next generation. Okay. Well, how are you going to do that? Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all these things, like they captivate our attention. Nobody wants a Udemy, nobody wants whatever these other apps are. No one goes on them anyway. You download them for a day and then you're like stuck on them, However, somehow I thought to myself, what's the problem I'm having? Attention. How do you get a bunch of attention? I could either force feed people education, or what is an area where I would have a lot of attention? Money. Well, money, everyone needs money and wants money. Okay. Oh, what if I did payroll? Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Well, how can I best do payroll? The companies that are huge, like, here in America, there's no way. What about international payroll? What are the biggest problems there? Okay, great. Let's try to figure that out. Awesome. Now that we have that as a framework or rubric, let's add education to it. Well, how do we create the best service possible? Let's ask all our clients what their biggest pain points are. And LinkedIn people, random LinkedIn people, what do you hate about offshoring? And watch them list a bunch of things off to you. Then ask the same thing for professionals. What do you hate about offshoring? They'll give you a list of things. I had 36 data points from clients, 18 data points from outsourced professionals. I create a solution for each one of those methodically, then bridge the gap. Then add education as a top piece to it.
So what I'm hearing, if you're listening and you're like, man, that sounds so far down the road, is a reminder that Reef issued first, which was go, fail, take a first step. You're going to get back into the unknown. And Reef, it sounds like what you did essentially was keep asking questions to the theme that has sort of been through-lined in our conversation. Curiosity is a big part of this. You were curious about what people needed, what they weren't getting, and then we're able to match unlike things to make them fit. So, dude, I really love what you stand for, what you're building, what you're doing, the way you're living, the way you're working.
Sure.
Where can people find you? If this conversation resonates and they want to find you, where can they look? Where can they meet you? Where can they
Anywhere and everywhere. I'm an open book. All my handles are Reef Colman, REEF, like the coral reef, last name Colman, like the camping gear, but without the E. They're free to reach out to me anywhere and everywhere they want. I do think questions are key to success. We should be curious about all things in the world. All great scriptures and all great scholars, even Jesus, Buddhist ideals, they all ask questions. Jesus even saying like, whose coin is this? Well, whose face is on it? He never answered. Rabbis never answered in an answer. They answered in questions. So we should learn from these ideals of other people and the curiosity that they lived with. And to what you said about failing, I think a huge collection point for me has been, I collect W's and L's, winning and learning. It's never a loss. If you gotten a new piece of information, it's a win or a learn. Collect all the W's and L's you can and turn your losses into learnings, and forever you will win, period. Because learning is winning. So you're only winning in life.
Yeah. Dude, I love that. Yeah. In my mind too, I love winning and learning. I say that often as well. Like, winning's a token, learning's a token. Just get a bunch of tokens, but don't stay still. Like, you got to go. So I appreciate that.
I agree. Aaron, I would just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, energetically, for this call and this conversation. An honor and a privilege to sit down here with you and share thoughts, ideals, and mind. This is a beautiful chat, and I hope it continues to happen. It's very good. I appreciate you.
I feel the same, man. It was great to see you open up, and I'm sure the conversation went differently than you initially thought it might be, but it went to a place that I knew you would have a lot of wisdom to offer. So thank you for being so open.
I'm working on, I just read the book Surrender Experiment, and I'm in the art of surrendering. So just allowing myself to be navigated by the universe and wherever my feet are called to go, and share whatever I need to share for that moment that's necessary. Yeah.
Dude, I'm literally rereading that book right now. So maybe that's our commonality at the moment.
There's where the mind meld is happening.
We're
right. Connecting here without even knowing it. Yeah.
Well, dude, thank you for being here. If you gathered something from Reef, send him a message, send me a message. I'll send it to him, but let's show a little bit of love. There's a lot of wisdom coming out of this man. And if there's more that WeAssist can do for you or your business, make sure you check them out. They've got some great ways to help you arm your team, build your team, grow your culture, maintain your lane of genius. and stay in where you're excellent. So check them out. And I appreciate you for tuning in. Make sure you get out of your own way. See you guys.